God bless these things. I know that they can be a problem. But I must step back for one moment. Don't make me forget what I'm talking about, the election. Must step back just for a moment. One of our parishioners from a form, who I knew in the husband and wife fairly well. When the husband was dying, she texted me about what was happening, because in her husband's life at New York Presbyterian. And before you knew it, every day we text back and forth, back and forth. She shared what she was going through, what her husband was going through. I text back to her. And when I preached at the husband's funeral, I held this up and said, this is a sacramental. This can be a great use, because I journeyed with Jean, and Jean journeyed with me through the texting, because I couldn't be there. I was on the road, but it sustained the two of us. Am I making any sense? Yeah. And after it was over, she printed it up, and once we sat down and just paged through, it was amazing what came out of our mouths and from our hearts as we journeyed with one another, And the funny thing was, she's still an acquaintance, but in that event, a spiritual companion in that event. And in our lives, we can't be spiritual companions with everyone, but we're like crossroad friends, We go our ways, and at particular moments, haven't you experienced it? People crisscross into your life. You support each other. It's as if you hadn't left the relationship. Then am I making sense? Off you go, and then another event comes. You crisscross because of the memory that's there. So God bless this. Election? Okay, all right. Well, you shared with me. You were with me when I turned 70, right? We were doing a intensive retreat. Where were we? In the seminary? In Miami. In the seminary or something? Yeah, and you celebrated my birthday, and I have a picture of the whole gang with me in the middle, my little face and everything else. It was so wonderful, and I was so young then.
What's happened, Father?
I don't know. No, diminishing. I'm not falling apart. I'm diminishing. My strings are breaking. Bing! Bing on my violin. All right, let's get. What?
The reading you avoid.
I'm there. By the way, receptivity. Receptivity, am I saying it right? Yes. Receptivity. Outside of church last night, someone came by. It's receptivity. I know it's receptivity. I had a brain freeze. Don't you have a brain freeze? All right. May the good hope, through his grace, encourage our hearts and strengthen them. Pray for all. And may the Lord direct our hearts to the love of God and to the endurance of Christ. And then at the end of the gospel there was, to him all are alive. And in this little email that I get, Contemplative Outreach has a series that you can join in the beginning of the year with spirituality and practice, where you sign up for a weekly thought on Sunday, and then you take the online courses. And one of the online courses that just ended was the welcoming prayer. Now, one of the people in the welcoming prayer, said, do the welcoming prayer. That welcoming prayer is a prayer where you welcome whatever is going on in your life, let go of your desire for security, esteem, and control, and embrace the moment. It kind of like clears the way so that you can live really in the present moment. And Cherry Hastings said, do the welcoming prayer no matter what, in any circumstance, because God is with us in that circumstance. When we can be present in the moment, in our feelings, whatever they are, no matter how much we would prefer not to be feeling them, if we can bring compassion, here we go, to that, then that is a moment of transformation. And that's what the welcoming prayer is all about. Living in the moment and bringing compassion to the moment, okay? So I'm thinking of the election, bringing some compassion to what's going on right now. The writer of this week's email was, this week is the culmination of an election process in a divided nation. Do I get an amen? Yeah. No matter the outcome, there will be outcries. No peace is going to come from this at all. And then she suggested, is Mary Ann Best who does this writing. That's her name, Mary Ann Best. She's our financial person. One remembers the words of Alfred Delf. Do you know Alfred Delf, the Jesuit, former Lutheran who became a Jesuit priest who worked for unity in Germany during the Nazi era? Was accused of treason because he was looking for at the common good, went to prison and was hung. And it was a martyr of conscience, we call it. Now, he wrote from his prison what I think can apply now. For God's sakes, I'm not saying we're in Germany. I'm not saying it's Nazis. Do you hear what I'm saying? Don't anyone misinterpret that. I'm just taking the wisdom that he said when his event that can apply to our own. This is beautiful. He wrote this in 1940s. We must keep on reminding modern people that God stands at the door ready and waiting, but that they themselves must open the door. That's an awesome thought. God's waiting for us to open the door. The grim happenings around us, you can just picture what was going on in the mid-40s. The devastation and violence, and you could say the division and rhetoric, are not exaggerated rumors. They're solid fact. The press did not make this up. There's something going on in the fabric of our country. And God knocks at the door of our spirit. His invitation to surrender to Him and embrace and return His freedom is a thing that should be taken very seriously. And He's calling us to be creative. So, looking at the larger picture, we got a lot of work to do. Those of us who have faith and believe with God's help, all things are possible. If you know history, my history professor was a wonderful gift to me. He had me look at history in a way that everything is cyclical. Everything is cyclical. And we're going through a period of purification. We're going through a period of undigested emotional stuff is surfacing. As we talked in centering prayer, you know, undigested stuff is surfacing in our country. And the response is, in a certain sense, to know that it's there and bring it to prayer, and know that there's always a better day when people of goodwill stay true to what they believe in. And I'm not talking about political action here. I'm talking about the internal work that all of us have to do. What is it telling us about what's happening inside of us on how we act and not act towards what we're hearing? Am I making any sense here? This is root canal work for each one of us because we contribute to it. We do without even realizing it. You know? And it just didn't happen out of the blue. All the candidates did was all of a sudden take the veneer off of what's going on in our country and had us take a good look at what's going on. And there's strong feelings. And I'm not criticizing anyone. The most wonderful thing about the conversion experience is when the stuff surfaces and you know what you have to deal with. I don't know what the answer is, but I know for sure that if you're faithful to being compassionate, you'll make a difference. So what is compassion? The first thing we said is grieving. And I'm glad you're feeling what I'm feeling. There's something that needs to be dealt with, and it's almost bringing us to tears. I don't know anyone that feels happy with what's happening. So we're grieving. Okay. The second part of compassion is forgiveness. Forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I'm not talking about reconciliation. It's, in a certain sense, asking forgiveness for what I have contributed to this. Or the image I have of, say, let's say, of Republicans, or the image I have of Democrats, or the image I have of current politicians, or the image I have of certain particular groups. If somehow or other our heart hasn't entered into knowing that even though we disagree, we never take them out of our heart, we need to do some heart work. Because unless we're sending a message, if you would, that's conciliatory, at least in our hearts, nothing's going to happen. Father Thomas has a wonderful phrase that I love. He says, utmost violence is only met with utmost charity. There is no in-between. It never works. And so the forgiving ourselves or forgiving people or forgiving our attitudes, that's in there. It's the drama inside of each one of us that we need to deal with in order to begin to think straight. That makes sense to you? Whatever needs to be healed, this is a wonderful opportunity to heal it. Whatever it might be, you know in your heart how one of the things Chardin says that you know you're moving towards higher consciousness, okay, when things begin to move towards unity. Well, you're not moving towards unity. So somehow or other, higher consciousness is stuck at a lower level of consciousness and hasn't moved to the upper level of seeing we need to work towards unity, real unity. I mean, we're trying to do it in the churches. Pope was over in Sweden for the 500th anniversary of Martin Luther putting the things on the church wall and everything else, admitting that some of it was correct and some of it we could talk about. But there's talk, there's movement towards unity. You know, even in contemplative outreach, you know, there's movement when you sit in prayer with people of different denominations where Christ is at the center of that. We're moving towards unity. But anything that moves towards disunity is not what compassion is about. It's not what God's about. It's what we're about, so we can set up little tribal camps against one another that really don't amount to anything. Now, I know you have to work through that. I know the body politic has to deal with the fact of sort of them and us, but not them and us with a wall between it. It has nothing to do with what Trump said. Nothing about the wall, but in our own hearts. And it doesn't, don't you misinterpret that, but it has to do with the fact that who wants walls when everything, in the world, the ideal world, you don't want walls, okay? So in you, whatever walls you created, it's time to look at it.